Welcome to Money Majlis, the podcast where we explore the future of finance, technology, and leadership with the world's most innovative minds. I'm your host, Suvo Sarkar. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Justin Grooms, president of Bolt, a leading checkout technology company that's transforming the way we shop online. With over 80 million shoppers connected through Bolt's Universal Shopper Network, Justin is at the forefront of retail innovation, helping merchants deliver seamless experiences at every touchpoint. Justin joined Bolt in 2019 as general manager of global sales and quickly rose to lead the company's global strategy. He brings a wealth of experience from executive roles across industries, including his time as the chief revenue officer at Leap Motion. Justin holds a BA from UC San Diego and an MBA from UC Irvine. Justin is in Dubai to speak at the Dubai Fintech Summit 2025 that was on for the last 2 days, sharing insights on the evolving payments landscape. Luckily, we were on a panel together yesterday at DFS, and that's when I invited him to join me at Money Majlis, and I'm so happy, Justin, that you obliged.
Money Majlis is proudly supported by Aqua Now, the premier crypto-as-a-service provider, now building in partnership with the top financial institutions in the Middle East. Discover more at aquanow.com.
Money Majlis is brought to you by E&, a global technology group.
Money Majlis is brought to you by Intellect Design Arena, driving digital adoption in banking and insurance.
Money Majlis is brought to you by Live Digital Bank, powered by Emirates NBD. Trust and innovation combined.
Money Majlis is brought to you by Network International, the leading digital payments technology company in the Middle East and Africa.
Justin, welcome to Money Majlis. Tell us your impressions of Dubai, which you're visiting after, I believe, 10 years. Also, your feedback on the Dubai Fintech Summit.
Yeah, thank you very much, first of all, and thank you for that great introduction. I have had so much fun the last few days in Dubai. It's clearly a very fast-growing, international, cosmopolitan city. But what's really stood out to me, and I think I've mentioned this a couple times to folks already, is the culture of innovation in this town. The culture of wanting to do big, audacious, exciting, world-changing things. It is a culture that when I travel around the world to different technology hubs, to different large cities, every once in a while, you get that feeling that this is a spot where there is innovators and entrepreneurs. I would say that the classic example of that is Silicon Valley in California.
Yep.
Dubai has stood out to me with how many founders building interesting solutions that I've met at this conference. And that's the biggest thing that I've, so to speak, called home about, right? How much it feels in a way like home. It feels like Silicon Valley, where I've spent so much of my life. And so it's been great. And yes, last time I was here was maybe 10 years ago, and the city has changed dramatically. But at the same time, the people of Dubai are, just as hospitable and welcoming and interesting as ever.
One of the speakers said yesterday, Justin, that Silicon Valley is not a place but a state of mind. And by that token, Dubai is front and center of Silicon Valley. You agree with that?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that concept. I think that there was this interesting trend, I think, of Silicon Slopes, Silicon Alley, Silicon, wherever in the United States. And then it started to expand pretty aggressively overseas with this concept that I think people imagine that you had to create an area that people would congregate in. I think it's really different than that personally, right? I think that it is absolutely a way of thinking about innovation. I think it's also a big defining characteristic is a willingness to do things that may fail. And if you really want to transform the world, if you really want to transform the economy, I think that it only works when people are willing to do big things that might fail. And that is a true Silicon Valley mindset.
Yep, well said. Just as the global payments industry seems to be at crossroads. On the one hand, it contributes a significant 35% of overall banking revenues globally at about 2.5 trillion US dollars. And it is made up of 3.4 trillion transactions valued at US dollar 1.8 quadrillion. And a quadrillion is 1,000 trillion. So it's a lot of zeros, 15 actually after one. So 1.8 quadrillion dollars gets transferred every year. However, the revenue growth is slowing down from 7% to 5%, and total shareholder returns of payment companies has dropped from 15% to 12%. Against such an industry poised for change, where do you see growth coming in the next 5 years for payments?
Yeah, it's certainly been an interesting time for the payments industry as a whole. We see, on one hand, significant consolidation, the WorldPay acquisition that occurred.
Yeah.
So massive players, joining together even more. We see things like Discover Financial joining with Capital One. So this massive consolidation is occurring. And at the same time, I think what we're seeing is more innovation on different payment types than, frankly, has happened in quite a long time. So the question comes, quite a bit is then, with all of this innovation and these opportunities for consolidation, what's missing in the space right now? I think that what's been missing in the space and what we've heard a lot about here the last couple days is the ability to quickly and dynamically integrate different payment types to make the payments that are presented to merchants or to consumers or any parties in a transaction relevant for that specific transaction. I think that there's been this significant amount of innovation, like I've said, but it's essentially sitting out there static or pre-configured. So I show up in some sort of transaction. The payment methods, the partners that are going to be handling the payments are all essentially pre-configured, have been predetermined. And I think that reflects the way of the past. And what gives me so much optimism about this space in general is that we are seeing the beginning of a revolution in this space where the types of payment that people are using for individual transactions can be in real time a bespoke solution that makes sense for all the parties in that transaction. I've said a couple times on panels and talks here is when I look at a transaction, it's not just the seller and the buyer, but there's also generally a payment partner that's in it, unless you and I are just bartering between each other. But otherwise, like there's a payment partner in that transaction. And when we start to look at those three parties of how do we make a transaction that's perfect for all three of those parties or as good as possible in each transaction, that I think is going to be what is this next step essentially that everyone's waiting for in payments.
Justin, just zooming out from what you just said, e-commerce is today a $4 trillion industry, US dollar 4 trillion globally, growing at a healthy 10% per annum. Now, while the lion's shares are held by countries like China and US, other markets like the UK, EU, and India are seeing rapid growth, including UAE, which is growing at 20% per annum. Top merchants are, of course, platforms like Alibaba, Temu, Shein from China, and then Amazon, Walmart, and eBay from the US. Now, Bolt Financial was set up in 2014 in the US to enable independent and small retailers to compete effectively with the online retailing giants with one-click checkouts and seamless payment options. Tell us how Bolt has been able to successfully disrupt this space.
Yeah. So when you look back at 2014, I did this the other day actually, and at an exercise at another conference I was at. We pulled up historical versions of what checkout looked like on common major brand websites over a decade ago, and once you got away from the Amazons of the world, the checkout experience was frankly, in retrospect, when I look back at it, it's almost terrifying how chaotic it was. It was not a integrated form. You would fill out all of your information each time that you went through if you completed the transaction. And then approval rates were very low online. Fraud was pretty high. Costs were high, and the checkout systems in general weren't even tied in many cases to things that are relevant for a transaction. That means ERP systems, inventory control systems, all of the back end tax calculation stuff that needs to happen quickly and accurately for a checkout to make sense. Bolt, over a decade ago, came up with this concept that frankly has been very widely emulated in other checkouts, where it's very flattering to see the concepts emulated so widely, of an integrated checkout solution, right? So Bolt was one of the first folks to say, we will sell a standalone integrated checkout solution that includes, if you want payments, fraud, identity management, an account database of all the shoppers that are coming through. And the idea is that, folks that are selling $1 million a year online, $500,000 a year online, or even $10 million a year online, don't have the infrastructure to compete with like what Walmart can do, right? The Walmart can build a checkout team, they can staff it, they can do all those things. What we found is, of course, that we did really well with the smaller businesses, and they would sign up quickly and come on board. But over time, I think we were pleasantly surprised to realize that actually, other than the top few, retailers online, most of these retailers, even ones selling billions of dollars a year through their site, they also don't have the infrastructure to provide a robust, state-of-the-art checkout solution. Checkout is frankly really hard, and to do it right, when it all works correctly and it's quick, and you're, dozens of systems have sort of simultaneously clicked into place and all worked for you to be able to order a sweater online. The company collects tax, ships it to you, make sure it's not been sold. We found that larger and larger customers were coming to us wanting to buy our checkout solution. And now, Bolt product is deployed on the biggest sites and around the world. LVMH brands, Richemont Group brands, some of the biggest direct-to-consumer digital brands selling, billions and billions of dollars online per year. And what they found is that they don't want to build a checkout solution and manage the thousands of integrations that we have to manage. And what we found is that checkout scales. Doing it really, really well scales. I was in a panel yesterday, and a very large payments fintech player out of California was sitting up there, and I was so I just appreciated they called out of they were building a checkout solution, and he looked over at me and said, "Yeah, we're building this checkout solution, and it's basically what Bolt does, right? We're basically trying to do what Bolt does." And this is one of the fintech giants. Someone can figure out who that was, but checkout's really, really hard. And I think that the great experience that we see online today was hard fought by our founding team to get there.
So tell me, talk of the founding team, you have a very iconic founder who's typically a Stanford dropout. I set the company up 2014. Tell us a bit more about your founder.
So Ryan Breslow has the straight from central casting background of a founder. He grew up in Miami, Florida. Went to a large public, government-run high school in Miami, in a not very affluent part of town, and worked extremely hard, and applied to a bunch of great schools and got into Stanford, and got to Stanford. And anyone who knows Stanford, it's an extraordinarily entrepreneurial culture, right? Like people are there to, if you go to, Stanford, people are there to do something big. And Ryan followed the path of just that. And, he had this idea about Bolt when he was there, and he dropped out of school. He will tell the story that everyone, his family and friends told him that was a crazy idea. But he was determined, and here he is over a decade later, and Bolt is massively successful, dominant player in the market. And
what valuation now, Justin?
Yeah, so the last round that closed for Bolt was the decacorn range, so over $11 billion.
Impressive.
The company has raised about $1 billion of cash to date. And I think it's an amazing story. And Ryan is still, actively involved and sets the vision for where the company is going.
Amazing. Justin, Bolt has a network of 80 million plus shoppers in the US, just US alone. And you provide them with one-click experiences, loyalty and cashback programs, and passwordless biometric-enabled processes. I have two questions. The first one is, today when you look at shoppers online, what are the key factors driving choices? Is it a product choice? Is it a platform choice? Is it a pricing choice? Is it security? What really guides customers when they choose where to go shopping online?
I think that, what shoppers are looking for, what we see, right? So we don't even have to rely on what Justin's opinion is on this. I think that what we can go and we can look at the fact that we have a decade of data on shoppers, and one of the, talking about how complex checkout is, one of the benefits of building a complex checkout and maintaining it is that you're collecting and seeing a lot of data for a decade and seeing a lot of different shoppers and how they behave. We found that there's one clear strain that will drive shoppers to repeat purchases, and that is agency over their identity and their information.
Okay.
So it means that the shopper feels that they're in control about what's being shared, and then predictability about the experience. We had some early concepts that, retailers won't do really well online if they don't offer delivery the next day always, right? Like that's not a thing. It turns out that the closer correlation is just the predictability of the experience. If I order something online, I feel like I am in control of my information going through that purchasing process, and I know when it's going to show up to my house, and I can track that afterwards. That is a predictable experience that will drive that consumer back to the retailer's website. As opposed to, which obviously then makes the acquisition costs for retailers sustainable. When there's a lack of predictability or consumers don't feel like they have agency over the process, you're certainly going to get one-off sales, right? You're going to go out, you're going to advertise, people are going to come in and buy one thing, they'll force their way through the purchasing process. But then they won't come back, is what we generally see.
But does the customer know that they're using a Bolt checkout, or is it white labeled?
Generally we've been white labeled. We work very hard to create the sense of disintermediation between the consumer and the merchant. If you are going to an iconic LVMH brand to buy something, or an iconic Richemont Group brand to buy something, if you're going to the Cartier site to buy a meaningful gift for a loved one, you know, you want that experience to be between you as the consumer and that retailer. And that you know, you've specifically opted into the vibe or the experience that retailer gives. So what Bolt does is that we aggressively work to just support that relationship, you know, between the retailer and the consumer. And that means that we don't add a button. That means that we don't add our brand, because, you know, we are there to facilitate the good transaction. We're not there to make it about us. And I think that what happens with that is that retailers really appreciate it, because consumers go through the process, and what do they don't think like, oh, I just had a good experience because I clicked this yellow button or this purple button or whatever. They think that, oh, I went on Cartier's website and I had the Cartier buying experience, right? Like, and that was just absolutely delightful. Or I went on the Revolve's website and I had a Revolve experience, and that was absolutely delightful. It works really, really well.
But does that mean, Justin, that you don't get to build your own brand of Bolt?
That has been a side effect of this, I think, for a decade of being so aggressively white labeled. You know, one of the commentators earlier today introduced us as, you know, the biggest deal in fintech that you've never heard of.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And I think that's you know, was a calling card for us for a long time. I think it was very much a point of pride for us that merchants knew who we were, but consumers generally didn't. I think that'll probably change in the near future, but you know, we still want to focus on being merchant and consumer first in everything that we do.
So my second question on the checkout process is the following. With the very important data elements of the customer being managed by your platform, the Bolt platform, whether it's the payment-related data or whether it's the PII, how does Bolt manage to ensure data privacy and security? Is that a big challenge in today's cybersecurity challenge times?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that this is another big value prop that Bolt delivers to merchants, frankly. You know, yes, right now we're even, let's even just look in the United States, where we do most of our business right now. That is 50 states, half dozen other territories to deal with, each one with its own little wrinkle on privacy law and own little approach to biometric privacy. And, you know, keeping compliant with all of those different jurisdictions plus national legislation that we need to be compliant with is definitely difficult, right? Keeping up to speed on all of the security threats and fraud threats that exist is definitely difficult, and we have large, talented, dedicated teams that work on doing that.
Yeah.
But as a lot of my friends at other fintech companies will say, is that, you know, compliance and security scale, right? So we can implement best-in-class privacy solutions. We also have, from the very beginning, had a double opt-in system on everything that we do. So we have a decade worth of data, and every single time that data has been passed from a consumer to a merchant, we've asked for permission from the consumer. Every single time, right? People, you know, we recognize that the consumer always needs to give their okay before we share any information. And I think what that does is it makes merchants extremely comfortable that our data is all properly permissioned and that it's accurate, because we're constantly checking with consumers, like, hey, before I pass this data to this merchant that you're on the website right now, just want you to enter this one-time password or go through this biometric field to make sure that it's permissioned.
Let me move to a different area now about choice. Now, innovation has provided customers, we know, with a wide array of choices, right? I can pay for my Starbucks coffee today in certain markets with my debit card, credit card, or prepaid card. I can, of course, with my digital wallet, whether it's Apple or Android. There is BNPL, there's crypto-based payments, there are QR codes, and so many other means, right? But do I want so many choices to pay for Starbucks, or do I want just a couple? Is this leading to fragmented efforts in marketing and security, etc.? And where do you think the payment rails are heading towards? Do you believe there'll be consolidation in the payment space going ahead?
Yes, I think that there's consolidation, but let me tell you where I think the level it'll happen at, that I'm betting on at least. First of all, I think that there's very few situations in life that I can think about where, having a ton of choices is helpful. There's this concept of the paradox of choice, essentially, in that you give people more options, and at some point they will become incapable of making a decision. And that's a sliding scale. Yeah. And more options get more and more difficult as time goes on. Anyone who drinks wine and has had a wine list put in front of them, can immediately think of the ridiculous things that they do to try to pick something, right? That might be a price point or a name that you like, or all the wrong reasons to be evaluating wine. The same thing, I think, could be happening in payments. There are dozens and dozens of ways to pay for things. I would say that there's hundreds. I think you and I could sit here and come up with 100. And no one's, though, wants to have a checkout field or a buying experience that puts all 100 payment options in front of the consumer. What they do want to do is put the most relevant payment options in front of the consumer. Yeah. So if you're walking into Starbucks, relevant payment methods that might be surfaced for you is your stored value card with Starbucks, maybe your credit card that has extra points when you use it for dining or buying fast food. That is probably not the time I'm going to surface ACH to you and ask if you'd like to use a bank payment to buy your cup of coffee. It's probably not the time that I'm going to see if you want to pull out your stored value from another retailer or your mileage for your airline account, right? These are all options of how to pay things that aren't relevant. So I think that on one hand, there's these obvious things, right? Like if I walk into a coffee shop, if I walk into Starbucks, it makes sense that my Starbucks app pushes itself open and basically says, I bet you want to use me, right? But for most transactions, it's frankly not that obvious what was the best choice. I think that where the consolidation is about to occur is at that moment of checkout, effectively, wherever that is, right? Like online, in real life, wherever it might be. I think that what's going to happen is that the most relevant payment types for the consumers, for the retailer, for the seller, and for the payment partner is going to be pushed to the top, and the consumer is going to be given some optimal amount of decisioning to happen, one or two things, with information about why this is the best choice. And I think that when that starts to happen, that is going to open up innovation in the fintech space, where people who have innovative niche product that fits a specific transaction type or a specific consumer, I think it'll take off like wildfire, and that's pretty exciting.
And I guess AI should help that process as well.
I think that AI is what makes it possible right now. I think that one of our investors that I met with while I was here was telling me about, like, it's Bolt's got, for instance, a decade worth of data. We can take that data and with really non-obvious signals, make some pretty good predictions on what how a transaction will turn out, or what the best payment type or shipping method or whatever will be for a consumer, like non-obvious signals. But what needs to be able to happen is for us to make those decisions and determinations in real time, fast enough that we can go through a checkout flow, we can go through a buying experience, and keeping up with the human being that's like trying to buy something, we're delivering those insights essentially and not holding them up, making life easier, taking taking unwanted choice away from people, and allowing them to focus their time and energy on, the real human choices that need to happen in life.
Yeah, and if Bolt is the common checkout for me across my groceries, my luxury purchases, and whatever else, then you get a pattern about my shopping, right?
Right.
Which is really valuable, which nobody has today.
Yeah.
And you could be the only company
and I
having
think,
that.
a very like important aspect of this is that we do not need to deliver insights
Yeah.
based on specific individuals, like your personal identity or my personal identity.
Mm-hmm.
This doesn't have to be like the Justin's profile type thing, right? What we can do is we basically can take these signals over a decade and classify transactions really quickly with type of shopper that's coming through, time of day, what they're buying, what's being sold. Is it a target for certain types of payment providers as a customer?
Yeah.
It is not about. It's not about personalization of saying like, oh, this is the Justin experience or whoever else. It is about personalization, saying in this very specific transaction that's occurring, because that's the cool thing about payments. It's a series of instant transactions, like instant being standalone. We should be focusing on delivering insights for those transactions. Not we get tied up on like trying to deliver insights on this is a person building this big profile. That weirds me out as a consumer. I don't want to build a big persona built about me. But, we can certainly say in a generalized sense, like transaction basis, customize the experience, allow the consumer to focus on shopping, like picking what they want and buying and going on with their life and not picking payment types.
Excellent. Let's talk for a minute on SMEs, Justin.
Sure.
SMEs are 90% of global businesses, right? Despite that, the payment solutions for SMEs still remain largely in the realm of wire transfers, traditional wire transfers, or checks, or cash in this region, for example. What are some of the innovations that you see coming for SMEs and payments?
I think that your comments around SMEs is a big. It goes directly in line with something that I think about a lot, which is that there is this sense of all of this established infrastructure around finance and payments in general, but how elegant it is and robust and all of these sorts of things. But the solutions that exist that are really robust and cutting edge and everything are generally built for the largest of enterprises, right? They're built for scale, and that's who's adopting them. And I think that those of us in the industry are in those positions of like being in large companies, large organizations, and we just kind of feel that, okay, everything's kind of working. And then in reality, you get down to it, and SMEs, the people that are coming to, small businesses that are coming to do work around your house, or that are coming to mow the backyard, or coming to, provide childcare services, or the small print shop down the street, like they're still basically just served by, like you said, wire transfers, cash transfers, checks, very high cost, like retail rate payment processing, like that you can sign up for online. There's not a ton of innovation that's occurring in that space that allows people to really either SMEs or I would even say like large portions of like population just have control and agency over their financial power.
But as far as fiat transfers go, checks take at least a day to clear, depending on which market you're in. And a 24/7 world that probably should near extinction, bank transfers still work on T plus X days, and X could be 1, 2, 3, 7 days, right? Depending on the country's settlement methods, etc., and the country's payment infrastructure. We are seeing cash usage declining, and is only 16% of POS globally. We are seeing users shifting to instant and real-time payments, which is expected to add about $575 billion, or a fourth of all payment transactions globally by 2028. What are some of the developments you're seeing in the non-traditional payment methods? What can we expect to happen in the next 5-10 years?
Yeah, I think that so first of all, I think that you calling out the amount of time that most transactions take is really important. I think that being able to sit on cash or wait for cash for a couple days, money for a couple days, is a privilege. And it's something that a lot of small businesses and frankly a lot of households, if not most households, just don't have the ability to handle. And or if they do, it's very expensive for them, and they're basically borrowing money short term to cover while they wait for the money that they're owed to come in. Now we know that a lot of this was done for two reasons historically. One was just logistics. It took time to move money historically. It used to be that wire transfers would be because they would run wires only periodically, and then they would be manually cleared on each side, and there was physical paper that was being moved and worked. That's obviously gone away. Yeah. The second is that, and why I think there's some stickiness in that space, is that a lot of financial institutions make money by holding money while you wait for money. Yeah. There is though a really strong emerging trend towards real-time payments. I think even for people who could float the money for a couple days are saying, well, I want to float it. I want it sitting in my account for a couple extra days. In the United States, there's a big player from a bank consortium called Zelle, which just last year I think passed the threshold of $1 trillion in peer-to-peer transactions, mostly SMEs, people paying their housekeepers, people paying their babysitters, people moving money between friends in an environment where they can't float. However, as fantastic as Zelle is and as wonderful as the people on that team are, I think that outside of like banking infrastructure, there's not enough innovation actually going on in this instant payment space through trusted rails, so to speak, right? Where I feel safe moving this money around. I think that there's some regulatory hurdles in different markets for people to get over, but this is going to be a massive change in the next couple of years. I would say the next year or two, actually, where you're going to see more and more fintechs focusing on real-time transfer of money. They're going to get away from making money by holding your money, and they're going to get closer to making money more like on an exchange of different payment types, which is at least a value add for consumers.
Good for the consumer, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
This is a good time for a commercial break. But before we break, let me remind you to visit my giving website, give.moneymajlis.com, to redeem your free $50 gift card for a charity that you choose from the 6 charities that I work with. My guest today, Justin Grooms, has chosen the Global Fund for Women to redeem the $1,000 gift card that I presented him earlier as a small token of our appreciation for his time with us. You can choose the same cause or any of the other 5 causes on the website give.moneymajlis.com. See you after the break.
The financial world is changing fast. Institutions need to meet the growing client demand for crypto financial services, but they need a battle-tested platform to build upon.
AquaNow is a leading crypto financial services platform, powering incumbent institutions to launch crypto brokerage, payments, and remittance services for their clients, securely and at scale.
Be part of the transformation. Visit aquanow.com today.
The end touches your life.
In more ways than you can imagine.
You want more tech,
More speed.
more convenience, more entertainment, more business solutions. EAN gives you all that and so much more. EAN. Go for more.
Parents teach their children to talk, to walk, to ride, to read. So why not teach them about managing their money? Introducing the all-new Live Light app, designed to teach 8 to 18-year-olds good money habits. A free and totally secure app designed for them that's always under your control.
Top up their cards, set limits, assign tasks, and reward them with allowances. Download the LiveX app to open a Live Light account in minutes, and the first 50 dirham allowance is on us. Visit live.me today. Live Digital Bank by Emirates NBD. Trust and innovation combined. T's and C's apply.
Money Majlis is brought to you by Intellect Design Arena. Intellect drives digital adoption in banking and insurance. Leverage emac.ai, the most comprehensive, composable, and intelligent open finance platform for banking and insurance transformation. Intellect Design Arena.
And touches your life.
In more ways than you can imagine.
You want more tech,
More speed.
more convenience, more entertainment, more business solutions. And gives you all that and so much more. And go for more.
Money Majlis is brought to you by Network International, the Middle East, and Africa's digital payments champion. We make business happen and economies prosper by simplifying commerce and payments. Trusted by over 250 banks, fintechs and telcos, and 130,000 merchants in over 50 countries. Bringing you tomorrow's payment solutions today.
Welcome back to Money Majlis. We are in conversation today with Justin Grooms, the global president of Bolt Financial, on the sidelines of the Dubai Financial Summit. Justin, let's now pivot to talk about crypto, a space that Bolt has recently ventured into. There are an estimated 550 million crypto owners worldwide, or over 10% of the adult population globally. UAE incidentally has the highest penetration of crypto, with 1 in 3 adults using or investing cryptocurrencies. Now, crypto-based payments are one of the leading use cases for digital currencies, with near instant settlements, significantly lower costs, and greater transparency. But there are, of course, negatives that we know of: price volatility, acceptance limitations, and some concerns from regulators. Now, your company, Justin, recently announced the launch of a super app, which will allow users, among other things, to buy, sell, send, and receive major cryptocurrencies and be able to see their crypto balances in real time. Congratulations on the launch. Tell us a bit more about what do you plan to do to disrupt this space.
Yeah, thank you. And we're very excited about the launch, and very excited about the initial reaction that we've received from the market and from our merchant partners and from consumers that have accounts with us. I think it's certainly outpaced our expectations. So we're very happy to see that. I think that what we looked at when we were addressing crypto, and we frankly touches on some of the stuff that we've talked about earlier, is we want to give consumers agency over their entire financial portfolio, so to speak, right? And that, of course, has historically included BNPLs and credit card, debit card, different type of classical bank payments. But what we did recognize is that, like, real-time crypto on an app, on a singular app that had widespread adoption and very importantly, could easily be used at places where people spend money, was just missing in most markets. I think that, maybe the UAE is, like you've suggested, one of the few markets that in the world that I've seen where it's not gimmicky almost to use crypto. People actually use it for things. I gave an example yesterday of it was actually an available payment method for buying coffee, and it didn't seem like just some funny little gimmick. It seemed like a real thing.
And to buy real estate.
Yeah. Buy real estate, like the whole spectrum of like considered and instant transactions, right? And of course the government here has been very perspective and forward thinking about how they approach the market, and the entrepreneurial culture here has been a big drive. But when we look at the super app market, right, of what we're trying to do is create this app where all of a person's financial horsepower is visible and usable to them. And that if we're doing something like you have crypto and you want to go to a merchant website anywhere, not even just a Bolt merchant, anywhere, and make that transaction, if they don't accept crypto, we want to facilitate that. And we want to allow you to use your crypto onto, a virtual card to immediately make a purchase.
Got it.
And, we think that, and then eventually what's certainly going to happen is more and more merchants are going to start to natively accept crypto to drive down their own costs. But we're going to build infrastructure that allows people to move money between, debt, crypto, debit, wherever the cash might be, wherever their spending power might be, different BNPLs, in a seamless way, all under their own control, and really have a picture of what their total financial spend power is, and in a way to put it to use.
And it only prompts those methods that are relevant and timely.
That's right. We want to, if you don't have crypto, right? If you have a Bolt account, but you don't have crypto, we're not going to present that as an option for you in any checkout. We're not going to try to push it to you. We're also going to help you understand and help merchants understand and payment partners understand what the right mix is of payment for different transactions, like we spoke about earlier. Sometimes that's going to be crypto. Sometimes it's going to be ACH. Sometimes it's going to be, cash. So we'll figure out how to support all these things.
So I guess you already talked about Gen AI, Justin. My next question was going to be on Gen AI, which is expected to add roughly 4% of the bottom line to financial services globally in the next 5 years. What is the impact, you think, of Gen AI on the payments landscape? Will it improve customer experience, reduce cost and frauds? What will it do really?
Yeah, well, I can say the big area that we see is quick decisioning and recommending that will happen. I think that being able to, like I've mentioned, instantly curate in transactions with massive amounts of data, what the right outputs will be, is very important. I also think that we're seeing it inside of Bolt. We're seeing it inside of how we manage our relationships with merchants and with consumers and with financial partners, is the use of, frankly, more process improvement and building with area-specific Gen AI tools that we use, ramping up of the use of agents, frankly, internally inside the company, and really working to ingratiate them into our organization in a way that is useful to people. And again, not just gimmicky. We're big on trying not to be gimmicky on things. I think that this industry, the finance industry in general, fintech specifically even, there is so much data. It is an industry of records and history. And, it is so ripe to harvest this data and put it to use to help us make decisions going forward on a real-time basis across the entire industry in a way that really leverages the record-keeping nature of this space. I think we're just so fortunate to be in a space that is ripe for use by Gen AI. There's other industries that are sort of need to start getting their records together and, build ways to do things. I think we've seen, in healthcare and stuff, people have talked about the records are kind of all over the place already. Correct. Well, fintech has been consolidating data for a long time, right?
And digitized data, that too, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, on that point, Justin, OpenAI recently announced it has begun a rollout of features that makes it easier and faster to find, compare, and buy products on ChatGPT. Will agentic AI and autonomous connected devices revolutionize e-com in the near future?
Yeah, I think that in a couple of years, the experience of shopping online will be dramatically different. I think that there's some naysayers that feel like this is another version of Google Shopping, that it's not going to necessarily get traction. I think the difference here is that, we go back to something that we talked about at the beginning of this conversation, is that what Google Shopping didn't deliver was a predictable experience for the consumer. So I could, if I was shopping for a new pair of Nike shoes, I could go on Google Shopping, but I couldn't consistently know if like there's good inventory control at this merchant, if the item's going to be shipped right away, what kind of payment options are they going to accept, is it going to be good for me? Like, it was an inconsistent experience. People didn't return to Google Shopping over and over again to buy. I think with the agentic, though, when we look at what OpenAI and other people are doing in this space, is it will have the ability over time to understand your expectations as a consumer and feed that into the model of what it's recommending or finding for you. Right. So that, I think, will be the differentiator, that it will then become essentially a more consistent experience for you as a consumer over time. And I'm not sure who's going to crack it as being like the portal for doing that. But the folks that do, that'll be the retail storefront of the future.
Now, one of the big issues troubling the payments industry is rising fraud. Global losses from payment card frauds are expected to reach $400 billion over the next decade. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And scams are being amplified, as we know, with the rise of instant payments and, of course, with the use of AI. What is the industry doing? And is it doing enough to address these issues?
Yeah, so the space is moving very fast, right? And a lot of it's interesting, a lot of the real-time payment scams that exist used to be scams that existed with cash transactions, right? So, permanent, quick transactions that can't be pulled back. I think that the industry is in a spot where it is sort of determining the right amount of friction to put in these transactions, the safeguards to put in place. I think that there's a tendency to look at the fraud numbers and want to just lock everything down, essentially, of imagine how secure we could make this.
Yep.
The counter to that is that, we in the industry are trying to do this in a way that is like doesn't put the burden on the consumer necessarily of needing to solve the systemic problems that the place has. We could lock everything down. We could dial fraud almost to nothing.
Yeah.
But the commerce would come to essentially a grinding halt. I think if we did that, I think that where we get it right is where we put enough friction into the process that fraud at scale doesn't work. And yes, a smart, devious actor might be able to get through one or two fraudulent transactions or low dollar items, things where they're really looking like a bona fide good consumer. And that's unfortunate. But we need to be able to stop it at scale and focus, I think, at stopping problems at scale and not burden consumers.
Got it. Just in shifting gear, you've been president of Bolt for the last 7 years, including interim CEO for a year, navigating the fintech industry through the pandemic, through market downturns, and other crises. Tell us about your leadership principles and how it has helped Bolt to scale up over 10x in terms of customer and merchant franchise.
Yeah, it's certainly been an interesting interesting few years. When I started at Bolt, we had big offices in San Francisco, right on Union Square, next to all the nice retail shopping and stuff, and a very classic big in-office culture.
Yeah.
And the pandemic came, and we became, I would say, like intractably remote. Our leadership team is all over the country now in the United States, including all out in Hawaii. Every time zone we could get. But what's been interesting is it's been.
So you could work out of Dubai then.
I could.
Yeah.
I could work out of Dubai. Before I was coming into it's a very interesting time zone. Yeah, I was coming in this morning doing calls with people late at night back in Hawaii and California. But something that we've focused on that I like to focus on as a leader is that my primary job is to help people understand their role in the story that we're telling.
Yeah.
And sometimes that means that you lay out a vision for everyone as a group, but you're also helping people understand their bit in the play, right? And people want to know that relevancy. And when we've done that really well, we've seen our team have maniacal focus and be able to move mountains essentially. The other thing that I think that people that are at Bolt have decided to do is to join a company that has massive, audacious goals that will continue to get larger and larger and larger. Bolt's not for everyone. It is a company that aspires to do big things. We have sharp elbows. We fight hard. We like to win. But we like to make sure that everyone gets to come along for the ride too. And if that's the right fit for people, they absolutely love working here. And of course, it's okay that it's not the right fit for everyone.
You said that the best piece of advice that you've ever received is don't have a plan B.
Yes.
Don't have a plan B. Can you elaborate what that means?
Yeah, it's fantastic advice if you can take it. I think that having a plan B, I think, confuses people about it's human nature. I think it confuses people to, what's going to happen? What am I actually focusing on? And I think that people start to focus on the contingency plan and as if it is the real plan and that the real plan or plan A is just unattainable and we were never going to get it anyway. I think that having a plan B is essentially just saying that you don't believe in yourself enough to do the plan A. Now, this only really works from my perspective if you have the confidence in yourself that if you fail, that's okay. I think that it's really scary when people say like failure is not an option because there's definitely ways to not fail. You just play it really safe, right? But if you're okay failing and doing things wrong when you need to, then you can really be comfortable swinging for the fences, so to speak. And I think that one of the big values at Bolt that I always loved was that we're good with people being wrong 20% of the time. And that's quite a bit, actually.
Yeah.
There are people that make very expensive mistakes at Bolt. But the payoff is that they made those mistakes because they were only focused on the big, audacious outcome that we were trying to get to. And for every, failure that we have, we've got 4 massive successes that balance it out. Now, I would say that, I've talked about this a couple times out there. I'd say that this only really works for people if, you get your sense of value from who you are and who cares about you.
Yep.
And not what you've done and, what's on the scoreboard, I think. So, I'm blessed to have an amazing wife and 3 amazing daughters, very loving and supportive.
Lovely.
And that's who I get my confidence and aspiration from. And at work, we focus on plan A.
Very well said. Very well said. I haven't heard that one before, to be honest. So, yeah, interesting. Justin, you've been in Dubai for the last 2 days, attending the Dubai Fintech Summit, and you're meeting lots of entrepreneurs and partners and regulators, the whole lot. What are your impressions of UAE and Dubai as a fintech and crypto hub?
I mean, I think that Dubai is a serious contender, if not the odds-on favorite, to be in the top 4 of financial, cities in the world within the next few years.
I agree. I agree totally.
I think that, I know that a lot of friendly competitors in the fintech space that I know from back home are here, are opening offices in Dubai. PayPal just opened up a regional headquarters with a superstar team.
Yeah.
I think that what people recognize is 2 things: is that you have first of all, I think that the easier one, or the harder one, I guess, depending how you look for it, geographically, it's in a great spot. It's in a spot with access to so much of the world that is frankly underserved by fintech and finance right now.
Yeah.
So the growth opportunities are massive. Access to Africa, the Middle East, especially, just massive growth markets, right, going forward. The second thing, though, I think why Dubai and not? There's other amazing cities in this. There's other amazing countries in this area. I think that, like we touched on earlier, there's this entrepreneurial spirit
and a can-do culture.
A can-do culture, and it's an international culture. I mean, you meet people from everywhere here, right? It's hard to get 2 people in the room from the same place here. It's a can-do culture,
which is infectious, almost infectious.
Yeah. Where people have come here to do something big, right? And you get that sense. Anyone who's ever been in entertainment, if you go to Los Angeles, like, you get the feeling that people come there to do something big.
Yeah.
And that people have uprooted themselves from somewhere else to come there and make something big. That's the sense you get in Dubai, because there are other, beautiful cities with smart, educated people and capital to invest. But that sense of doing something big, and then to be privileged enough to have a government that is working so hard to enable that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, the leaning forward. I mean, the fact that the Dubai government, has English language common law courts to help resolve disputes, to allow foreign investors to feel familiar, at least, with coming into this market. The fact that, regulations around open banking are so progressive here compared to other parts of the world. The international exposure from, you meet people that have gone to amazing universities all over the world. It's not that everyone just went to England or something, right? It's all over the world. A truly global perspective from any of the leadership that I've spoken to of just this, I'd almost say unique desire to learn best practices of how things are done in other places, and willingness to do that. I think that special dynamic that makes me think that this area is going to be the next big financial hub.
So given the dynamic, Justin, and given what you heard and seen over the last 2 days at the Fintech Summit, are you encouraged for Bolt to make an entry to the Middle East?
Yeah, we would. I think that, so first of all, there's one thing that's very easy for us to imagine, and that is partnerships with entrepreneurs and in this space, right? Very easy. This is a hotbed of people who frankly have been trying to do things that we're trying to do in the past that we're trying to do now. We talk about a super app. We have amazing partners in the area that have built super apps themselves, right? And are working to get them to market. So from a talent perspective, very easy to imagine those types of partnerships. From a market perspective, I think that we're looking at the next geos that we expand into. We focused very much on the American market.
Yeah.
which I think is a tough market, and I think we've done well in a tough competitive market. Where we want to focus in on next is, what are those geos that we can go into that have similar concepts around payments, right? Identity-based. Consumers want options of things, right? So they don't want to just go through a single app that has one payment type or whatever, right?
Yeah.
They want options, and then a real, I would say, sort of like a culture of laws and rules that we can build product that people support and feel safe using. I think the Middle East is, UAE specifically, some other places in the Middle East more generally, are prime targets for us to be looking at.
Excellent. We look forward to that. Time now, Justin, for some rapid fire questions.
Love it.
I want you to take out your crystal ball and think of the year 2030 and then answer the following questions in a couple of sentences each, right? So don't overthink it. Just give me your first reaction.
Okay.
By 2030, crypto and blockchain payments will make up at least 25% of global payments.
Yes, I think so, because we're at a spot where we're on the precipice of consumers being able to use it, and SMEs, as you so astutely pointed out before, who make up so much of the market. That is going to be the differentiator, is when these things are genuinely usable by consumers. Blockchain payments, the benefits for security around that, if we can get it right, it just could be revolutionary.
By 2030, cash will cease to exist in most of the developed markets.
I think that no. I think that there is a value that fiats get from being able to do something which is small, anonymous, instant transactions offline.
Yeah.
It is a so far I would call that a uniquely fiat thing. In fact, I think in most countries it's illegal to develop an offline currency. So I think that it'll always have a place. I'm just not sure, how meaningful it'll be.
Fair enough. By 2030, 100% of domestic payments will be taken over by national payment platforms.
This is something that some folks here would potentially disagree with me on. I think that in some countries, yes, where the national payment platforms are forward-looking and try to integrate with industry and actually create usable solutions. Then I'd say absolutely. You've seen examples of government-led initiatives in India that created
the UPI.
Yes, created like truly usable solutions for folks. I think that there are other governments around the world that historically have not been as good at building usable solutions for folks. And in those cases, I think there'll be a strong place for private industry. Okay,
moving on. Big techs like Apple, Google, and Amazon will become significant players in the payment space.
I don't think so, actually. I really don't think that they're well positioned to do it. I think that they're obviously big influencers of the space based on how much usage they can influence. I think that there's more emerging fintechs that are well positioned, and if I'm controlling capital investing in the space, and I believe that there's going to be a revolution in the payment space, I'm probably going to dump that capital into a company or group of companies that are going to focus on that and aren't necessarily worried about how they're going to sustain their legacy lines of business.
With rapid development of AI, which is available to both the payment companies and the fraudsters, will fraud losses as a percentage of total payment volumes go up or go down by 2030?
I think it'll go down.
Okay.
I think that, first of all, as unfortunate as fraud levels are in digital transactions, they're lower than offline transactions, right? So there's more accountability, there's more security on online transactions. So on one hand, more things are going to go digital. The second thing is that there's an institutional advantage that fintechs and banks and other big financial service providers will have going forward, in that the more and more that fraud prevention relies on data and data signals and the processing of massive data, these us in the fintech industry, the banks, other financial partners, we have the advantage of having that data and being the custodians of it and being able to see it on a massive level. So yes, there will be innovative fraudsters who, opportunistically find ways to continue to scam the system. I really wish they would, turn clean and go work for a big fintech and help on the other side, but I get it. They won't. But no, I think that the numbers will go down over time.
Excellent. That's good news for consumers. Remittance costs, which are today about 4 to 5% of payment volumes, will fall to 2% for all payments, including small payments, by 2030.
Yeah, I think they'll go down quite a bit. And the reason is I think that more transactions, I don't think it's all bad news for the payments industry, by the way. I think that, like I said, I think there's going to be more of a marketplace for different payment types where consumers are going to be able to see and merchants will be able to see the relative benefits of different payment types instantly in a transaction, which will drive down costs and pricing over time. However, I think that the total market for online transactions or digital transactions will increase as this becomes more, as the tools become more accessible to, as we've mentioned a couple of times now, in consumers and SMEs.
And finally, Justin, payments anywhere in the world will be instant 24/7 by 365.
Anywhere that there's a data connection, yes, I think so.
Excellent. You did very well. The rapid fire round is now done.
Thank you.
Justin Grooms, president of Bolt, the man with only a plan A, father of 3 delightful daughters, and a resident of Washington, D.C. Thank you for your time at Money Majlis today. I truly appreciate your accepting my invite to come to Money Majlis at such short notice. You've been awesome. Your thoughts have been, your insights have been amazing. And we hope to see you back in the UAE very soon.
I'm sure we'll see each other soon. Yep.
Money Majlis is proudly supported by Aqua Now, the premier crypto as a service provider, now building in partnership with the top financial institutions in the Middle East. Discover more at aquanow.com.
Money Majlis is brought to you by E&, a global technology group.
Money Majlis is brought to you by Intellect Design Arena, driving digital adoption in banking and insurance.
Money Majlis is brought to you by Live Digital Bank, powered by Emirates NBD. Trust and innovation combined.
Money Majlis is brought to you by Network International, the leading digital payments technology company in the Middle East and Africa.
Now that brings us to the end of today's interesting episode of Money Majlis. If you like this podcast, please share with friends, family, and colleagues. And if you have feedback for me, any feedback, whether good, bad, or ugly, please email me on suvo@moneymajlis.com. I look forward to hearing from you. And please do remember to visit my giving website, give.moneymajlis.com, to get and redeem your free $50 gift card for a charity of your choice. Money Majlis is conceived and scripted by me, produced by Podster, and is supported by Aqua Now, Emirates NBD, E&, Intellect Design Arena, and Network International. My research partner is Shekhar Krishnamurthy, and my giving partner is Good World. And for today's episode, I am grateful to Emirates NBD for lending their studio to me. Thank you, Mai Shablak. Thank you, Hemant Julka. Till next time, goodbye and ma salama. Stay well and do good.